Ms. Strasnick?
Thank you, and before I call the next witness, yesterday the Commonwealth displayed a digital image of a cup during Sergeant Williams' testimony.
Yes.
That's been put on a CD. There's no objection to that being marked as the next exhibit.
There is an objection.
There is an objection.
Correct. That was my witness.
Yes?
I object.
All right, because you think the digital image is not a fair characterization?
That's correct. It appears to have been lightened.
Didn't the witness say it was?
I don't know. He identified the red cup
All right.
as the image, called it orange, and then he showed a digital image that wasn't even in evidence.
All right, the objection is overruled. It may be admitted.
You know, the Commonwealth would call Juliana Hooper, please.
And by the way, jurors, when you heard me say, didn't the witness say it was accurate? If that's what the witness said, you still determine whether it's accurate. That's just a matter of whether I admit the exhibit. That is, it's been authenticated in some fashion as an appropriate picture for you to see. But it's always for you to decide whether, as you heard Mr. Scully suggest, it's been lightened or whether it's, in fact, an accurate depiction of the liquid.
Would you raise your right hand for me, please? Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in the cause now in hearing shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you. You may be seated.
May I proceed, Your Honor?
Yes, you may.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Could you please introduce yourself to the members of the jury, stating and spelling your name for the record?
My name is Juliana Hooper. First name is Julianna, and last name is Hooper.
What is your occupation?
I'm currently a forensic scientist, too, at the Massachusetts State Police Crime Laboratory.
And before getting specifically into what it means to be a forensic scientist, too, could you very briefly describe your educational background to the jurors?
I have a Bachelor of Science degree from Western New England University.
What is a forensic scientist, too?
I currently work in the criminalistics unit as a forensic scientist, too, where I examine, test, and collect evidence.
How long have you worked as a criminalist within the Massachusetts State Police Crime Lab?
I have been a forensic scientist since 2019.
Prior to 2019, were you employed by the Massachusetts State Police Crime Lab?
Yes, I was.
In what capacity?
In 2017, I was a laboratory technician, also with the criminalistics unit.
What were your duties and responsibilities as a laboratory technician within the crime unit?
I basically maintained the cleanliness and quality control within the lab, as well as make chemicals and prepare samples for external testing.
As a member of the criminalistics unit, could you briefly describe what your duties and responsibilities are in that position?
Currently?
Yes.
So currently, any evidence that is submitted to the laboratory by external agencies or ourselves, I examine for blood, semen, saliva, trace, damage. I also collect for other units like DNA, arson, and trace.
Do you have specialized training for those responsibilities that you just described?
Yes.
Could you briefly describe what those specialized trainings are?
I received my training through the crime lab in the criminalistics unit. Basically, the training entails each type of collection and testing has their own module. So, for example, blood, semen, and saliva have their own sections. So we do a lecture, in-lab practices, written test, and an final lab test to complete the training.
And does your work as well as other members of the criminalistics unit undergo any type of ongoing quality assurance controls?
Yes.
And what is a quality assurance control?
So for testing, we do quality assurance controls on the chemicals that we use. And then other than that, we also do proficiency testing to ensure that we're still testing our evidence correctly, or if the protocols or training needs to be updated. And then we also have audits as well, both internal and external.
And what specifically is a proficiency test?
So proficiency test is given yearly, and basically it's from an external vendor. We get samples that we then test using our protocols, and there's a key that is used later on for grading it, and we either pass or fail, and from there if pass, great. If fail, then it goes on to a quality assurance investigation.
Is there also competency testing that you undergo to ensure that your work is being done properly?
Yes.
Just very briefly describe that as well, please.
Similar to proficiency test, again, it's just samples that are given to us, and then there's a key afterwards to grade it. For the competency test, that is done after training is done so that we can ensure that I can complete the testing and follow the protocols correctly.
Is the Massachusetts State Police Crime Laboratory accredited?
Yes.
What does that mean?
That means that we undergo audits through an external vendor to ensure that we're following international forensic standards.
Does the work that you specifically do in your unit undergo any type of review process?
Yes.
What type of process does your work undergo for review?
Once I complete work with a specific case, it then gets reviewed by a peer to ensure that everything that I did was done correctly and based on our protocols.
In the criminalistics unit, before getting into the specifics of this case, in the criminalistics unit, how are cases assigned to you or other members of your unit?
Once they have been reviewed by our case management unit, it's then assigned to our criminalistics unit itself, which then is assigned to me by my supervisor.
And when items come into the laboratory for potential examination or testing, is there a way in which the lab is able to keep track of those items in terms of where they are and who is testing them?
Yes.
Could you describe that process to the jury briefly?
We use an electronic laboratory information management system that basically tracks it through the case number and item numbers and tracks the custody of the item as it goes through the lab.
Is a short nickname for that the LIM system?
Yes.
Is every case that's submitted to the lab given a unique case number assigned to it?
Yes.
Is it fair to say that for every potential or every piece of evidence that's submitted to the lab, it has a unique item number that goes with that case number?
Yes.
And is that tracked throughout the lab depending on if it's in the criminalistics unit, the arson unit, crime scene services, if fingerprinting was done?
Correct.
Once your supervisor assigns you a case, what is the process? What do you do?
I first review the case information, so if there's any police reports or notes on the case, and then I also ensure that the items that were submitted are documented in our case file as well, and then I go from there in terms of testing and collecting within the lab itself.
So if you get assigned a case, where is it that you go to retrieve any items that you are to examine?
They are located in a cold storage room or a locked storage area.
What do you do once you go to either the cold storage room or the locked storage area?
Retrieve the item and then put it into my custody.
And is that scanned so that it's able to be monitored, that it's in your custody?
Yes.
Once an item or items are taken into your custody, how do you maintain the integrity of those items while you're testing it?
So all items are sealed into their own packaging with initials and date to ensure that they're sealed and not tampered with. And then I do photographs of the packaging. I also ensure that the area I'm working on is bleached and clean, as well as the utensils like pencils, pens, rulers, and tweezers are all cleaned and ready to go. I also place a piece of bench paper down, and then that's when I open up the item and put it on the bench paper.
And you specifically, are you wearing any items to ensure the integrity of any testing that that's being done on those items?
Yes.
What type of things are you wearing, I guess?
So in the lab, we wear lab coats, mask, and gloves.
And when you're doing swabbing or testing of various items, do you do the items together or separately?
Separately.
And why is that?
To ensure no cross-contamination.
I want to specifically turn your attention to this case, the lab number 22-24257. At some point, were you assigned to conduct some examination or testing on various items that had been submitted that related to this case?
Yes.
And what specifically did you do as it related to this case once you became assigned?
After I was assigned, reviewed the case, and then started working on specific items that were submitted.
I want to specifically talk to you about item 2-1. Do you remember what that item was?
Yes.
And what was that?
It was submitted as a deicer bottle.
And what did you first do as it related to that deicer bottle 2-1?
I first documented it with a ruler, case number, item number, my initials and date on the bench paper, so photographs, and then I also documented any observations that I saw as well.
If I may approach, Your Honor?
Yes, you may.
Ms. Cooper, I'm just going to show you 2 photographs and ask if you recognize those 2 photographs.
I do.
And what do you recognize those as being?
The photographs I took of the deicer bottle.
If these could be marked as the next 2 exhibits, please.
Any objection?
No, Judge.
They may be admitted.
Exhibit 55 and 56 are not.
With the court's permission, if I may publish exhibit 55.
Yes, you may.
Thank you. This is the item that we're just talking about, right?
Correct.
And the background is the bench paper that you just described.
Correct.
The ruler is depicted in this as well.
Yes.
And the numbers, if you could just take us through what's written on the bottom of the photograph that you took.
So the 22-24257 is the case number. The 2-1 is the item number. And then next to that are my initials, JRH, and the date that I took the photograph.
I'm going to now show you what's been marked as exhibit 56 and ask if you recognize that.
Yes.
And again, those same markings on the bottom that you just described.
Yes.
After photographing that bottle, what, if anything, did you do as it related to that item?
After photographing and documenting observations, I then swabbed areas of that bottle.
And could you kind of take the jury through, when you say you swabbed areas of the bottle, what is the process for which you use to swab an item?
So the swabs that we use basically are a two-sided piece of material that's flat, kind of like a spatula at the end of a stick. One side is moistened with water. I then apply that to an area on an item. And then on the other side, it's dry. I then reapply that area to swab up any potential DNA.
And how many swabs did you do of that specific item?
1.
If I may approach, Your Honor?
Yes, you may.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit 22. Is this the actual exhibit that is depicted in the photograph that you were just discussing?
Yes.
Could you show the jury how it is that you specifically swabbed that item, what you would have done or did?
So taking the swab, again, it's on a stick and it has like cotton at the end, swabbing the handle area and the exterior cap area. So going over it once with the wet side and then once again with the dry side.
And you swab the cap and the handle area together for that item.
Yes.
What do you do with the swab once you've completed your swabbing of that item, specifically what's in front of you?
The sample is then allowed to dry. I do label it with the item number. So this would be item 2-1, and the swab now has 2-1.2 attached to it. Once it's dried, I then make a sample for DNA testing.
And is it fair to say that that was given item 2-1 when it was submitted to the lab as potential evidence, correct?
Yes.
Any prior testing that would have been done as it related to that item, whether anything, a fluid was removed from it, that was item 2-1.1?
Correct. If there was any other sampling before that, it would have been given an item number first as 2-1.1, and then when I worked on it, my sample would be 2-1.2.
And in this case, that's specifically the item number that it was, item 2-1.2.
Yes.
What did you do with the swab of that item 2-1.2 once it was dry?
Once it's dry, I then prepared a half of the swab for DNA testing.
Why do you do half of the swab?
That is routine for this type of analysis, so it's just general DNA collection. So we do half of the sample for DNA, and we preserve the other half for any additional DNA testing that may be done later on.
How are you able to obtain half of the swab? What specifically do you do?
I use a sterile scalpel to cut the half.
And that half that is cut that then's going on to DNA, is that given another lab number to correspond with the half of the swab that then is being sent to DNA?
Yes.
And in this case, what specifically was that half a swab number that was sent to DNA?
2-1.2.1.
And is that the extent of the testing that you did as it related to the item that's in front of you, the RainX bottle?
Yes.
Did you have an occasion to do additional testing on items that were submitted to the lab?
Yes.
Specifically, did you have an occasion to do testing on item 2-2?
Yes.
And what is item 2-2?
Item 2-2 was submitted as a Powerade bottle.
And could you very briefly again just take us through what you did with the Powerade bottle as it related to your examination?
Similar to the deicer bottle, bleached area, new bench paper, item number, case number, all that type of stuff with the ruler on the bench paper, photographs, and then documentation of anything that I observed.
So any testing or swabbing that you did as it related to the RainX bottle, everything's cleared away, your entire station is cleared, bleached, and you essentially start over with the second item?
Yes.
If I may approach, Your Honor?
Yes, you may.
I'm going to show you two additional photographs, and the super and ask if you recognize this. And I'll also take that away. You recognize those?
Yes, I do.
What do you recognize those as?
These are photographs of item 2-2, the Powerade bottle.
And you took those?
Yes.
If those could be marked as the next two exhibits, please.
Any objection? No? All right, they may be admitted.
Is it 57, 58, so marked?
With the court's permission, may I publish these as well?
Yes.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit 57 first. Again, this is the Powerade bottle that you were just describing.
Yes.
And this is the clean bench paper that you described behind it.
Correct.
Again, the lab number that you described, the specific item number, your initials, and the date.
Yes.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit 58. And is that just the other side of the Powerade with those same identifying numbers and letters on the bottom?
Correct.
What did you do as it related to item 2-2 after you photographed it?
Similar to the previous item 2-1, I also swabbed it for potential DNA testing as well.
How many swabs did you do as it related to the Powerade bottle?
I did 2 separate swabs and samples.
And when you do 2 separate swabs and samples, do you follow the same procedure that you just described in terms of the moist Q-tip and swabbing it?
Yes.
Which 2 areas did you swab when you tested the Powerade?
The first sample I took was 2-2.2, which was 1 swab of the entire exterior of the Powerade bottle. And then the second sample I took, which was 2-2.3, was a swab of the interior cap and mouth area of the bottle.
And if I may approach?
Yes.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit 20 and identified as item 2-2. I don't know if you want the gloves or not. But if you could describe to the jurors specifically the first swab that you did, the exterior of that item, which became 2-2.2. Could you show the jury which area you swabbed on that item?
So for 2-2.2, that was the swab of the entire exterior. So again, just taking the swab and doing the entire surface once over with the wet side and then again with the dry side to collect any potential DNA.
And did you follow the same procedure that you described relative to what you do with the swab after you've completed the swabbing, having it dry?
Yes.
And did you cut that swab in half and send half to DNA?
Yes.
Was the swab that was sent to DNA given another item number to indicate that it was half of the original swab?
Yes, it would have been given 2-2.2.1.
Now, as it related to the second swab that you did of the Powerade, did you change your gloves in between doing the first swab and the second swab?
Yes.
And could you describe to the jury specifically what you did as it related to that Powerade bottle when you did that second swab of the interior cap and mouth area?
So for the second swab, I would remove the cap first and then swab the.
If you don't, yeah, could you show them specifically what you did, if you don't mind?
So basically swab all outside of the mouth area and the inside of the mouth area right here. And then also on that same swab, the interior of the cap as well.
And is it fair to say that second swab was the specific area that was not encompassed in the first swab of the exterior?
Correct.
All of the areas that you swabbed during that second swabbing were covered by the cap that you had to remove to swab?
Yes.
And did you follow the same procedure as it related to that swab as you've previously described on the other swabbings?
Yes.
And after it dried, did you cut it in half and then send it for DNA?
Yes.
What item number did that become?
That would then be 2-2.3.1.
And when you cut that swab in half and sent it to become or became 2-2.3.1, the scapular that you used to cut it, was that cleaned or different than the scapular that you used to cut the swab from the exterior?
Yes. So for each sample, it would be their own scalpels, disposable, clean, one-time use.
In addition, did you have an occasion to do some additional testing as it related to a blood sample provided to the laboratory?
Yes.
And what was that sample that you were asked to do some testing on?
That was 5-1.
And was that the known blood sample of Leroy Fowler taken from autopsy?
Yes.
And what did you do as it related to 5-1?
So basically it is a blood tube that we receive, and all that is required is to take a couple of drops from it and place it on a clean piece of paper that then gets sent to the DNA unit.
Did you follow the same procedure as it related to that blood tube that you were asked to essentially send to DNA by photographing the item prior to taking the blood from it?
Yes.
If I may approach, Your Honor?
Yes, you may.
I'm going to show you two more photos and I'll see if you recognize those.
Yes, I do.
What do you recognize those as?
The sample 5-1, the blood tube.
Is it fair to say that it was originally in packaging and you had to remove the tube and you also photographed that as well?
Yes.
If those could be marked as the next two exhibits, please.
No objection, Judge.
They may.
And 60, so much.
Thank you. With the court's permission, if I could publish those?
Yes, you may.
I'm going to actually just show you what's been marked as Exhibit 60 first. If you could describe what's depicted in there.
So this is the packaging that contains the blood tube.
And I'm not going to zoom in, but did it have that LIMS number and the item number that we've been describing depicted on the barcode on the package?
Yes, it has the LIMS number and the specific container that the item is documented in LIMS as being in.
And that barcode's how it's scanned throughout the lab for potential testing?
Yes.
I'm going to show you now what's been marked as Exhibit 59. And that's the blood tube?
Yes.
Once you put the blood from that tube onto a paper, it's sent to DNA?
Yes.
And am I correct that you have no involvement in the DNA testing? You just collected the items and they're moved to another unit within the Massachusetts State Police?
Correct.
As it related to the item 5-1 that we're talking about, prior to removing that tube and doing any testing, was that done after the testing, the swabbing of the Powerade that we were just discussing?
Yes.
Is it fair to say that the blood 5-1 was never in the same area of the Powerade bottle while you were swabbing it?
Correct.
I have no further questions for this witness.
Mr. Norconis.
Judge, if I could claim the USB drive that had all the items from the search.
Sure.
Item 48, the search of the house.
48 is the defendant's interview. 29 contains photos. 33 also contains photos. No, that was one that was marked.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
Now, in relation to the bottle itself that you were just shown, Powerade bottle. Coach,
Yes, you may.
Yeah.
when you receive that, you're already at the Massachusetts State Police Lab in Sudbury, right?
I'm actually located in Danvers, but correct, in the lab itself.
Somebody brings it in, right? When they bring it in, is it any type of special sealed bag or anything?
I don't know how it was submitted, but I do know that once it reaches the lab, it has to be sealed before it goes into our custody.
And in terms of what you do for testing, does it matter? Like you're not aware of how it was found or where it was found, right?
No, we only receive recovery location on the evidence submission form, but we do not know, other than that form, where it came from before then.
Now, is it fair to say in context of DNA that, like fingerprints, DNA can be left on a substance, and the presence of that alone does not provide sufficient information as to how it was deposited, right?
Correct.
When it was deposited, correct?
Yes.
Or who deposited it, correct?
Correct.
And DNA can cling to an object. The studies would show you for decades, right, if it's undisturbed.
Yes.
And in the normal household, that might simply be days or weeks, correct?
Yes.
And in terms of, there's something called secondary transfer, right?
Yes.
All right. Secondary transfer would be that an individual can deposit DNA on an object without ever touching it, right? It can have touched something else that then touched that object.
I have heard of secondary transfer. I don't know the definition. I'm not as familiar with that as someone in DNA may have been.
DNA can be left on an object by someone who touched it or was touched by someone who then touched the object, or even further removed. It can travel easily itself, right? It doesn't necessarily always have to be, I touched this. I could be close enough, or the cells could get on that object, right?
Correct. DNA can come from various forms like saliva and other things that can be deposited without touch.
So when you bottle itself, in this particular case, if it came from a recycle bin, we'd be able to have that from item 29, it's an exhibit. If the object that was placed or given to you came from a large recycle bin with numerous other objects from that same household, then there could have been a transfer aspect from any of those other items to that bottle, correct?
There is a possibility of contamination.
And particularly because you would not know how long it had sat in that container, correct?
Correct.
And how long, and what the weather conditions may be. A little bit of wind could blow DNA from one of the other objects to that object, right?
I don't know about that, but I do know that the reason why we test and collect from items separately is because there can be cross-contamination when they come into contact with each other. So that could be another reason for cross-contamination.
That's it. That's good. Now, terms of testing at the lab, on items such as that bottle that come into the lab, from your knowledge of how the processing works, there could be a request for both DNA and fingerprints, right?
Yes.
Now, if you test for fingerprints, you can eliminate the DNA, right? Don't you? If you're testing for fingerprints, are you swabbing?
So for the fingerprint analysis, that's done before the swabbing to ensure that if there's fingerprints, we don't destroy them from swabbing. So first, it's looked for fingerprints if there are none, or even if there are some and there isn't a clear indication of where they came from, we still swab for DNA.
So you would go to fingerprints first, then DNA,
Yes.
and doing the fingerprint isn't going to eliminate or contaminate the DNA?
No.
You would hope, right?
Yeah, as far as we know. Yeah.
Now, in relation to the cap itself on the bottle, and if I may claim that, Judge?
Yes, you may.
Fair to say that this is full. I can't drink it with that cap on, right?
Oh, correct. Yes.
Right, so I have to take the cap off, right?
Yes.
And when I take the cap off, I want to put it in the jury glass here. I could put the cap here, right?
Correct.
Therefore, if there's someone else's DNA in there, it's going to get in potentially on the inside of the cap, right?
Potentially.
Right? Either transfer or if I move the cap, right? And in the household situation, if my wife touched my hand, I wiped my mouth on it, I could have had her DNA on my lips, right?
Potentially. I do know that for the skin cells in the mouth, they are a little bit more loose than skin cells on skin. So I don't know how much of DNA would be left behind, or if any, I'm not sure.
And then when I touch the mouth of the bottle, her DNA is going to be there, right? Potentially. Right?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
You can't say no, right?
I'm not.
Transfer, a secondary transfer, touch something else and touches that, right?
Yeah, I'm not familiar with how transfer studies have gone in terms of that type of
Now, in
transfer.
this particular case, you got to learn that this was taken from a household where the two people whose DNA are associated with it lived there, right?
As far as I know, yes.
And therefore, potentially touched everything in the house, right?
Potentially.
DNA is all over the place, right?
Could be.
Potentially some in the air, potentially, right?
Again, I'm not sure how DNA transfers in that way.
And so having it on the bottle is just, it's inconclusive as to how it arrived on the bottle, correct?
Correct.
Now, and again, as far as how long it had been on the bottle itself, right?
Correct.
And were there any fingerprints on the bottle? Did you strike that? Did you do the fingerprint testing?
I did not.
Okay. And again, that was done before the DNA testing, right?
Correct.
In relation to the, strike that, Judge. I don't have any further questions. Thank you.
Mr. Resnick?
No further questions, thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Hooper. You may step down.